Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the rotation and Druid. So the Hearthstone standard rotation is approaching, it's coming on April 7th with the new expansion, and 3 expansions are going out of standard format. The Witchwood, Boomsday Project and Rastakhan's Rumble are departing standard and will only be available in Wild from April 7th. But how does that affect the current decks? In this video we'll take a look at Druid. There are currently 3 viable Druid archetypes. The first one is this one, the Embiggen Druid, which was brought to life with the Winged Guardian and Galakrond's Awakening adventure. And a typical Embiggen Druid list looks something like this. There are of course some variations in the lists, but from this list, Snip Snap, Witching Hour, Leroy Jenkins and Ziliax are leaving standard format. Leroy Jenkins is going to Hall of Fame, the others are going away with the regular rotation. What does this mean for the deck? Well, Witching Hour is far from necessary already. Sometimes Frisk Kindler Roost is used in that place, sometimes Bad Luck Albatross is used. Both of them, by the way, will remain in standard, so they will still be available. They can also be used to replace Snip Snap to an extent. The more difficult parts are Ziliax and Leroy, because Ziliax is one of the few ways this deck has to heal, and Leroy is just great because it gives the deck a lot of reach. And for those cards there are no immediate replacements in sight at the moment. But if you put in a pair of Bad Luck Albatrosses in the deck and maybe Frizz in the deck, and then you look for one finisher from the new expansion. So overall it looks like Embiggen Druid has a chance to survive. It's not completely rotation proof, but many of its cards do remain in standard, especially the 3 most important cards in the deck, Embiggen, Strength in Numbers, Breath of Dreams. All of those remain in standard, and Winged Guardian, the evasive taunt minion that really made the deck, that remains in standard. So the basic pieces are there, but it loses some flexibility. Then there is Quest Druid. And Quest Druid, well, the quest itself is going to remain in standard, so Quest Druid also in theory can survive this rotation. It isn't even losing that many cards. It's losing Ferocious Howl, War Druid Lodi and Floppidinous Floop. However, it's losing quite a lot of quality there. Ferocious Howl is already a card that is not used in every list at the moment. It's sometimes replaced by Steel Beetle, which is a fairly good substitute, especially with Rising Winds already in the deck, giving it more card draw, so sometimes you just don't need the card draw from the Ferocious Howl. So that's not a problem for the deck at all. But losing Lodi and Floop, that's a bit more of a problem, because War Druid Lodi is the only piece of hard removal available to Quest Druid. So without Lodi, without that Poisonous Rush coming in, how is Quest Druid going to deal with big minions? Even worse than it's doing now. So that can definitely be a problem for Quest Druid. And the same applies to Floppidinous Floop, because previously you were able to do Lodi, and then you were able to do Floop Lodi, so you actually had 2 pieces of hard removal. Or you were able to do something like an Oasis Searcher, and then a Floop Oasis Searcher, so you had a bunch of these rush minions. Or you were able to do Ysera and then the Floop Ysera, so you had a lot of dragons coming from your deck for those slower matchups. So it just was an incredibly flexible card. Now it's going away. For the win condition part, King Faris is going to remain in standard, so there is an option to run both King Faris and Ysera in the deck, so you can have a couple of win conditions. But Faris obviously doesn't give you that flexibility, you can't play that early. And then on the flexibility front, Worthy Expedition is going to remain in standard, so there is a chance to put a Worthy Expedition into the deck and maybe use that to dig for some additional Searchers or Starfalls. It can give you a bunch of answers, even though not quite as flexibly as the Floop. Overall, the survival of Quest Druid really depends whether it needs that hard removal in the upcoming meta, because that's something the deck is not going to have. But other than that, it has some potential to be able to stay. And the third Druid archetype that sees play nowadays is Token Druid. Token Druid can be built either with Treants or with mechs, and well, all the mechs rotate out, so you won't be able to build it with mechs. after the rotation. But what about the Treant list? The Treant list is going to lose 3 cards. Dendrologist, those spells discovered if you have Treants. Landscaping, one of your Treant cards. And Mulch Muncher, and that's really going to hurt. Mulch Muncher becomes cheaper when you have more Treants have died. And it's a big beefy rush minion. It's just a key piece in removing something big from the path and then pushing in with all of your tokens. So Treant Token Druid had finally found enough pieces to actually work. There were enough tools to have those Treant synergies and activate them. And now it's going to lose a bunch of these. And that's also going to make it more difficult to use stuff like aeroponics, for example. And it's going to make Koru the Maitri a little bit weaker, because you lose some Treant generation. So overall these do hurt. However, there are some cards available that will stay in standard format that are used in some lists. For example, Bees. I really like Bees in Token Druid. I actually think it should be a core card, even though it's not part of the most popular lists at the moment. But Bees can replace in some function the Mulch Muncher and in some function the Landscaping, because it gives you some removal and it gives you something to do on turn 3. And then there's Dreamway Guardians, those small minions with lifesteal. Buff them up, it can actually help you against some of the more aggressive decks. But it's not quite a Dendrologist. So Token Druid probably could use something from the new expansion to really survive. But there is a chance to build it already without the rotating cards. Overall then, things actually look pretty decent for Druid. There are 3 archetypes of Druid that are seeing play. None of the archetypes lose that many cards, they lose some key functions, and it might be that in the upcoming meta, losing those key functions is just a bad thing to happen and they will not be able to recover. But there's also a chance that all 3 archetypes could continue to see play after the rotation. There are also a couple of other cards that are rotating out from Druid that I didn't mention when I talked about those decks. And they are the Dream Petal Florist, which has been used in various Malygos Druid builds. That will not be possible anymore. Floop's Glorious Gloop and Pounce. These have been used in some Quest Druid decks, for example, and they have been pretty good also in some Quest Druid decks. Those have not become the mainstream variant, but it's an alternative variant that is alive and well, but no longer, because both of those cards are leaving, so that style of Quest Druid and also the potential OTK that could be achieved with these cards is gone. I'll be theory crafting some new Druid decks once we have all the cards available. This is just a look into what Druid is losing in the rotation, and it looks like all the Druid decks have some chance to survive. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.